Hello and welcome back to the sim. In this episode I want to continue building the 737 Saitek Throttle Mod. This is going to be the second mod and it's basically the base before we move on to the third mod where we remove the complete Saitek base unit itself and people then can just print the whole unit without having to buy anything. Let me show you what we've got so far and we'll head over to the computer on my right here. This is the base that I want to create and the Saitek unit will fit in here along with the flaps unit that we created in the last episode. And just to show you what it's going to look like, there we go. So here's the Saitek unit in black. Here's the flaps unit that we created to go on the side of the unit on the last episode. And we've added the fuel cutoff levers, the stab trim, the parking brake light and the parking brake handle. It also puts the levers in a more realistic position. If we take a closer look at the throttle unit base now, and I take the end cap off. There we go, we can have a quick peek inside. I'm going to take the brake support cap off as well. There we go. And you can see that the brake lever sits inside this assembly here. It's got two detents, so it positively locks in the idle. You can see that the brake lever here has got two detents, so it positively locks in the on and off position. This micro switch is just being used for that positive detent feel. There are no electrical connections to this side. There is, however, a micro switch hidden at the back here. Let's see if I can take off the body. There we go. It's actually this micro switch here which activates the parking brake on. Put that back on. Let's head outside and see what we can achieve. Here we are back in the workshop, ready for assembly of the Saitek throttle unit. This is the second part. All the parts are 3D printed. Let me talk you through the electrical components first. Starting with the LED light. Now this is an LED indicator that I got off eBay. I think I got about 10. And they just seem to work very well for this project. We've got two on-off toggle switches. They're the cheap ones from eBay. And then we've got 4 roller micro switches. Other components we're going to need are a couple of springs for the cutoff levers, and I've got a big box of all sorted countersunk screws. Here is one of the fuel cutoff levers, and all we're going to do is we're going to insert an M4 bolt into the stud. It's now time to put the lever handle onto the lever. There's the number 1, and now we simply repeat with the number 2. We're simply going to attach the lever stud side down against the flat side and apply an M4 bolt. And it needs to be free to move, so it's not going to be too tight. That's good. And then we're going to put the spring on. And that should work like that. We're going to flip it over and then put the micro switch in. That's going to sit in there like that. And we can see now that when you pull the handle, it pushes against the micro switch and creates the circuit. And we do exactly the same for the other side. We're going to put our centre cheese piece with its locating studs into the fuel cutoff lever assembly of number 1, and then we just simply fasten with 3 screws. I'm going to put our cutoff unit to one side for the time being because I want to build the brake lever assembly so I can get the wires in and then feed them through that unit to the other side. Starting with the brake lever assembly, we need to add our micro switches. The purpose of this micro switch is so that you can feel the lever is in the correct place in both locations. So we need to get some long screws for there. There's our first micro switch for the detents, and then we actually need our activation micro switch, which goes on the back side. So before we can test the brake lever, we need to insert this screw into the activation cap, and this will screw directly into the brake lever assembly. As you can see, as you pull the parking brake lever on, it activates the micro switch and then it comes off, and the other side locks in the off position, and then it has a positive click in the on position. So before I go any further, I'm now going to solder up the parking brake micro switch so the wires are there ready to be fed through the unit. I'm going to feed the wires through the left hand body assembly, and then we're going to insert some screws into the unit. So now it's time to fit the brake lever. Let's make sure we get it the right way around. So it's going to sit in like that. So we need to turn it around, and we need to put our switch cap into that hole. That's just going to sit in the panel like that, and it's a very firm fit. While I've got the soldering iron out, I might as well solder the wires to the toggle switches as well. Then that's all the wiring done, and we can just fit the components in location. To make things simpler when we assemble these three parts, it's easier if you start some of the bolts in the three holes, like so. That'll come clear in a minute. So hopefully you can see that I've loosely installed 3 screws into the filler plate. That's going to push in to the left hand body assembly. Like so. And now we're going to install the screws in this side. Flip it round, and hopefully now you can see why I pre-installed those 3 screws, because they're now hidden down in the unit, and it's a lot easier to now screw them up and fasten them. And hopefully you can see I've moved the light out of the way for the time being so I can fasten the last screw. It's at this point of the video now where we need the throttle assembly that we created in the last video so we can hide the wires into the base unit. With the units orientated, I'm going to feed the flaps lever unit cable through the hole in the cutoff lever assembly. And the USB cable out the back. We can put our rear filler plate on now. Time to fit the right hand filler plate. Feed all the wires through the hole. So just like before, I'm going to pre-install 3 screws into the filler plate, so it makes it easier to screw them in once they're installed into the right hand body. For this version, for myself, I've got the wires coming out the back and I'm going to have the interface board outside the unit. However, if I was going to keep this unit and physically use it, I would mount both the Leo Bodner card or the Arduino in this end panel here. That's why all the cables are designed to come to the right hand side. So you've only got one cable exiting the unit over to the computer. Just going to put some screws in the back ends of the filler plate assembly. Next up is to install the two toggle switches, and that's all the electrical components installed into this unit. These nuts are going to help hold the decal in position. We're getting there, let's fit the end caps. And that's our unit complete. For cabling, we've got our original USB for the Saitek throttle unit. We've got a Leo Bodner card here, which is a joystick card, replicates a joystick. And we've finally got two more pins here, one ground and one with a resistor in, and that's going to plug directly into the Arduino to give us a working LED light. Let's head inside, get her programmed and see her working. Here we are back inside. Here's our completed throttle unit in front of me. At the back here I've plugged the USB into the Leo Bodner card, and we've got one more additional card that I'm using, and that's going to be the Arduino via MobiFlight, and that's because the Leo Bodner card doesn't do outputs. So for the LED, I'm using the output of the Arduino, and you could just use the Leo Bodner for the axes, the potentiometers, and put all the buttons on the Arduino. I just wanted to show you a different way of doing it. So we're using the Arduino Mega, this is, for the LED light. Let's head over to the computer and start programming. So in MobiFlight, the first thing we need to do is we need to go into Extras, Settings, MobiFlight Modules, and we need to select our Arduino board. We've only got one connected for the time being, and mine is called the Prototype Arduino. We need to add a device, and for me it's simply an LED. Parking brake light, and it's going to be on pin 13, so I might as well put that in. 13, and select pin 13. Hit upload. Yes please. We're going to wait for the OK box to say it's finished. There we go. Now we can close that page down. In the Output tab, we need to say Parking Brake Light, and then we need to edit the line. Now, this is the FSUIPC offsets page. I'm not using the standard offsets, I'm using the offsets for my sim, and that's where this Excel spreadsheet comes in. It's got all the offsets required for my whole 737 sim to my left, your right. And you can already see that I've highlighted it, and it's offset 530 Foxtrot. 530 Foxtrot, and it is bit 1 in the byte. So we can deselect all the other bits. So every time bit 1 comes positive to a 1, it will switch it on. And when bit 1 becomes a 0, it will switch it off. It's as simple as that. That's all the settings done. And then we select our Arduino, we select our pin. There's only one pin, so it automatically. Then we hit test, and the light works straight away. Great stuff. We're going to hit stop, hit OK. I'm going to activate the line, and it's already running, otherwise I've had to hit run on Mobiflight. I'm going to minimize Mobiflight because that's the Arduino and its programming completely finished with. I'm going to close the offsets page, and we're going to open up ProSim Server. Into configuration, because we're using a joystick card, which is a joystick simulator, we need to go into drivers, and we need to make sure that the direct support for joysticks is enabled, just like in the last video. You can see that it is, so we're going to hit OK and head over to Combine Config. In Combine Config, we're going to head down to the Throttle MCP assembly. Open that up, and then in the switches, because they're all going to be buttons and switches left to program, the first one we're going to head down to is the parking brake lever. They are alphabetical. Now our micro switch is in the on position, so if I move that, the Leah Bodner card automatically reports at the top here that I'm using that Leah Bodner card and it's button 3. So I find the parking brake lever in the on position again. I select the Leah Bodner and it's automatically selected button 3, which is the correct one. And when I switch it off, it's going to 0 there. That's working really well. What's the next one? So next we've got the fuel cutoff levers. Let me head down to F. And idle. So I'm going to move the number 1 into the idle position. You can see that it's button 5. It's automatically selected it. And I'm going to do the same for the number 2 cutoff lever into the idle, and it's button 2. Automatically selected. Brilliant. Then we've got our stab cutoff trim switches here. So we're going to head down to S, hopefully. There we go. And that is button 4. Perfect, it's automatically put it in. And the same for the cutout. That's button 1. I'm going to hit OK. What we need to do now is we need to test those new functions. And well, we should be able to test the parking brake light straight away by putting the parking brake lever on. Try not to get my fingers in the way, and hopefully you can see that the light came on and off. So we know that's working good. I'm going to head over to the Throttle MCP menu, scroll down to test the other ones. So we've got the fuel cutoff levers. There we go. And they're now highlighted. And if I move the number 1 into position, into idle, you can see here that that now is indicating the switch is working correctly. And the same for the right one. That's fantastic. And hopefully if we scroll down to the stab trim switches, have I passed them? Yes, I have. Normal, normal, cut out, cut out. Working brilliantly. Well guys, that brings us to the end of another episode here in 737 DIY Sim. The throttle assembly, the throttle base. If you've already downloaded the throttle assembly in the last episode, what I'll do is I'll put the plans exactly in the same files. All you have to do is re-download the throttle assembly and the base will come free with it. If you haven't already, I'll put these in the shop ready to buy. There is a modification in the base unit here, and that is with the parking brake lever. I've had to beef it up. During the assembly of this and testing, it snapped on me, which wasn't very good. So I've stepped away from the realistic design of the aircraft because it's not metal and it is plastic, and I've added in the extra rear support, which makes it really strong, and perhaps it should have been there from the start. That's all for now. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. I'll catch you later, guys. Sim out.